International Accountability Project and a director, and also David McGaffey once again.
You know, we gave these first awards out in 2006. We worried that we might run out of people in the East Bay who are doing remarkable things. It hasn't happened. Aren't these marvelous people? I'd like to introduce the latest awardee, the International Accountability Project. Now, in the last decade, as the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan have entered our living rooms, we've all suffered with reports of collateral damage, where operations done for what was seen as a good purpose may indeed accomplish that purpose, but in the accomplishment hurt innocent bystanders severely. The International Accountability Project has taken that concept and shifted it in a new direction. One of the purposes of the UN Charter is economic development. We are pro-development, but economic development projects funded by the major banks also feature collateral damage. The IAP has looked at this, looked at the people who lose their lives, their homes, their livelihoods, their hope for the future, because somebody in an office someplace decided that a dam here or a mine there or a project there is important for development. And the IAP has been working to change global policy through partnerships, advocacy, and efforts in all of the major banks to ensure that development not only helps the country as a whole, but actually acts to the benefit of the people immediately affected. The International Accountability Project.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. It's a great honor. I want to thank the United Nations Association of the East Bay and International House for hosting this event. And thank you on behalf of the International Accountability Project for this award. It's a great honor to be recognized as a global citizen and to share this event with the other awardees, including Barbara Lee, who is a great personal hero of mine, so it's nice to share the stage. And in terms of the theme of the evening, of marginalization, inequality, disparity, poverty, that's an issue that we are working on a daily basis at the International Accountability Project. Many of you know that the World Bank Group is a member agency of the United Nations, and there's sort of a general, I think, presumption in the parlance that they're doing good in the world, which is certainly true, but less well known is the fact that oftentimes projects financed by large development finance institutions, including the World Bank Group, but also regional development banks like the Asian Development Bank and the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, and also private banks following the lead of these international financiers. Oftentimes the money, the resources, the vast resources that are at the behest of these organizations are put towards projects that, as David said, are sort of decided from afar as being of economic benefit to the country. And the problem is that oftentimes those decisions are being made in a way that don't include people on the front lines that are being affected by dams, by coal-fired power plants, by coal mines, by pipeline projects. And as a result, it's a really sensitive clicker. As a result, these people are rising up in ways that seek to challenge these projects. This is an infamous road project financed by the World Bank that was in Amazon many years ago. These photos, most of them are taken by me and one by a friend of mine who's a much better photographer. But they're from the Narmada Valley in India, and any story that discusses these issues would be incomplete if it didn't include the story of the Narmada Valley. In 5 minutes, I can't go into the far-reaching impacts that this struggle has had, but it's an iconic struggle for land and livelihoods that's been fought from a grassroots perspective. And each year, this dam, in particular Sardar Sarovar, but there's a whole chain of them on the Narmada, which is one of the most sacred rivers in India, in which many indigenous peoples and communities have lived for generation after generation after generation. And what happens is that there's a decision that the Sardar Sarovar Dam, for example, makes sense and should go forward. And then there's not a lot of consideration for what happens as the dam height rises, and hundreds of thousands of people are displaced over the years. And so when I started working on these issues, I worked before founding the International Accountability Project, I worked in DC for a group called the Center for International Environmental Law. And so I come at this from a background of somebody who has always been passionate about environmental issues. And my work sort of took me to this intersection between environment and human rights, because when you're facing the destruction of your community, you know, it's a complete interlinkage. And you would go to meetings at the World Bank and face a common kind of refrain that sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. And I wish I could say that was an anachronism, because it felt like it then. But in fact, we had a team from the International Accountability Project in Washington, D.C. last week, meeting with executive directors of the World Bank, and they got that exact same message. You have to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So what does that mean exactly? Who are the eggs? Well, more than 15 million people a year are facing development forced evictions. And the pictures of my predecessor of the slums in Nairobi were really telling, because what happens is the bulldozers come in and, the bulldozers come in and literally, physically evict people and destroy their homes. It's astonishing and it's wrong. And it is also a scene that is repeated over and over and over again. And so there has been policy reform. One prong of what the International Accountability Project does is we work at the global level to change the policy framework. So if you are an organization with a mandate of poverty alleviation, using public taxpayer dollars in pursuit of that mandate, logic says you ought not to be simultaneously impoverishing the people who are on the front lines and who are sacrificing their lands, livelihoods, and homelands, and communities and cultures in the name of development. And so there, through a great deal of citizen organization, there was gradually a process for creating standards and policies. And we've done this work at the World Bank Group. We've done this work with the regional development banks. We've also reached out with UN special rapporteurs, for example, on the right to adequate housing, to try to come up with rights-respecting frameworks to ensure that when people do make these sacrifices, that they're involved in the decisions and that they are able to define what development looks like, rather than what development looks like being designed by people who may have, very high degrees from the London School of Economics and so on, but haven't even been to the project area where they're talking about implementing these projects. And so IAP helps serve as a bridge in bringing both awareness of the rights that are created through these hard-fought struggles. In the Narmada Valley slide that I showed you earlier, again, I can't get into the full depth of the changes that have happened, but that struggle led to both the first independent evaluation of the extent to which the World Bank was complying with its policies on involuntary resettlement on indigenous peoples, which resulted in a scathing report about the impacts on tribal communities and on poverty. And that in turn led to, through more advocacy at both the global level and at the grassroots level, to the creation of something called the inspection panel, which was the first time that any two people who are affected by these types of projects can file a complaint. Sorry, I'm not doing it with this clicker. And request an investigation into whether the World Bank is actually following its policies. And then getting the policy change and getting an accountability tool are sort of the first step, and then actually making sure that it's reaching down and making change on the ground is the next step. And so we work in support of targeted intervention with frontline communities that are resisting displacement and helping them articulate their rights and advocate for their rights, and then also helping them navigate into the halls of these global financial institutions so that they can demand that things be done differently and be done in a more rights-respecting way. I am the founder and chair of the board, and I'm accepting the award on behalf of the organization because right now the whole staff is scattered far and wide. And we just had a team in Washington, D.C. That met with, I'll come back to that slide. This is our global advocacy team. And we had people from 8 different countries and frontline communities from Burma, Cambodia, Egypt, Mongolia, Pakistan, Panama, the Philippines, and Zimbabwe, all working with frontline communities that are resisting displacement and demanding rights-respecting development. And they did an intensive training and skill sharing in DC. We have with us tonight a fellow at IAP, Sayu Tipaksan Mampati, who's from Thailand. She's our first Smita Katari Fellow, and that's a fellowship that was created in honor of one of our beloved founding board members who's no longer with us, but has also sort of dedicated his life to making the world better for people who are on the front lines of these development projects. So most of our team is with the global advocacy folks who just did a trip to Washington, D.C. and New York. We have staff presence in New York and in Oakland. IEP was started in Berkeley, so it is very much an East Bay and also UN-affiliated organization. Another member of our team is currently in India, where we're doing a community exchange between a group of folks from Bangladesh who are fighting the world's largest open-pit coal mine is being proposed for the breadbasket of Bangladesh, and it would take away arable farmland, rice-growing land, and turn it into a gigantic open-pit coal mine, which would have an immediate effect on over 100,000 people, and then cascading economic impacts on more than 200,000 people. And so IEP has helped work with those folks to stop the Asian Development Bank from getting involved and Barclays Bank from being involved. Now a team from Cambodia has gone to India, where we have a long history of working with coal-affected communities who are affected by World Bank-financed coal-fired power plants and coal mines, so that they can see firsthand what the impacts are, because there are no open-pit coal mines in Bangladesh. And so the international company that wants to build this mine went and took Bangladeshi officials to Germany to say, this is how we do coal mining, in Germany. But it's actually not really done that way. And so they've taken it to the team in Bangladesh to see open pit coal mining in India. And I don't have a slide in here, unfortunately, of some of the coal mines in India, but it's quite devastating. So I don't mean to sound too depressing, but I do just think it's important when we think about international development, to keep in mind the full picture and the full range of costs that are associated with this goal of the right to development. And all too often, the folks that are being displaced from these communities end up in basically tin shacks in a resettlement colony that don't look significantly better than the photos of the slums that you saw. They lack access to their livelihoods because most of the folks that are displaced are being displaced from land-based agricultural pursuits. They then lose, they don't have title to their tin sheds. The structures are not built to accommodate, the seasonal realities of where they live. So in the Narmada Valley, the tin sheds can be 130 degrees in the summertime, and they can leak during the monsoons, and there's not adequate access to sanitation. And, the toilet facility might be built, but then it's in complete disrepair and not usable. Water pumps might exist, but they have no water to clean out. Job training programs are created, but they're not jobs that lead to a future that can support a family. And so when you take away people's land, you're taking away their inheritance, you're taking away their children's inheritance. There's nothing more to pass down when you lose your land. And so it has a very strong intergenerational impact. And so we are working to change that. And we envision a world where communities and the voices of experience actually inform the decisions that are made within these institutions in a way that shifts the idea of development in a way that's inclusive, in a way that is rights-respecting, in a way that doesn't require you to break the eggs in order to create development, right? That's just a flawed paradigm for an institution with a mandate of poverty alleviation. So there have been some victories. There have been a lot of heartbreak and hardship, but there's also a lot of important momentum for change. We're honored to be in a room with so many young people, because I think that young people are a big part of where change is coming from. And with innovators, such as the work that the professor's doing and the cook stoves and things like that, addressing a need and finding the need and solving the problem. And we do that by helping to bring the voice of affected communities into the halls of power. This is in a park right outside the World Bank. And making sure that the people who are making the decisions are doing so in a way that's better informed to lead to better outcomes. So